Time before him, so that way he already has an idea. So he can
Okay, so we're live right now. The question was, is synthetic alcohol haram to be on the clothes or the body, and does it invalidate the prayer?
الكحول الصناعي يعني لا يصنع للشرب.
كل ما يغطي العقل فهو خمر.
Anything that makes the mind clouded, that actually would cause drunkenness if drank, then
خمر. كل ما غيب العقل فهو خمر.
Then it carries the ruling of khamr, that forbidden the alcohol that is. So I talking about denatured alcohol.
معناه إنه نجاسة.
So then that means it is impure.
Does it invalidate the prayer?
Yeah, it would take the ruling of najasa. Which you can't buy it and you can't sell it and
you can't wear it.
Wait, you can't buy or sell. What about for if you're like purifying chemicals or something like that? You need this.
For what?
For like making medicine or something like this.
So according to the Maliki, some of the scholars give permission. So some Maliki scholars also.
So if you use this regularly at work, you can't.
Okay.
I think there was also one more question. You had a question?
الفجر والصبح. انفجر هو فلق الصبح، والصبح أيضا هو الصبح. ماذا قال تعالى؟ والصبح إذا تنفس. الصبح تقال عن التنفس والفجر تقال عن الانفجار.
What is the difference between Fajr and Subh is the question, and the answer is there's no difference. كيف نحسب الفيء؟ يعني كيف نعلم أن وصل الاستواء وقت الاستواء؟
قلته في أول الدرس، قلت إن الذين يراقبون الظل حتى يسكن، هذا هو عبارة.
Sisters, please pay attention. So somebody asked how you, and this is something that was mentioned in the class. You put a stick or a pen.
أو تقف أنت بنفسك.
Or you stand yourself.
تراقب هذا أنا أفعله دائما.
And you draw a circle.
حتى يسكن الظل.
And then you see if the shadow changes. The shadow, of course, as the sun rises, gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter.
حتى يقف على حالة واحدة لا يزداد ولا ينقص.
You get a flashlight, you can see, you know, if you hold a light direct, like far away from something, it's gonna, at the same level of that thing, it's gonna cause a very long shadow. And then as soon as you raise this light higher and higher and higher, the shadow gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Once the sun reaches the top and it's reaching the top, this is where, when it's close to that time, then of course the shadow is being cast on the opposite side of where the light is coming from. So the sun is rising from the east, the shadow is generally going to be in the opposite direction. Once the sun is at its highest, now the shadow isn't. The shadow now is switching its direction, and the shadow is not stops getting shorter. Once the sun starts to go down, then the shadow would get longer. So to know when this time exactly is, the measurement, the Sheikh said, put a stick or a pen or something, you stand yourself. Draw a circle around so you can monitor the shadow. Draw a circle around this shadow and you'll see it. It'll move. Once it stops moving, then you know that this is that time of noon, where the sun is at its highest. And then it may move, but it's not going to get shorter or longer. Then once you see it getting longer now, it goes outside of the circle. You can change the circle as the time goes by, or you can draw another circle, or you can make a mark once it gets to its shortest. Then once it ever goes beyond the mark that you made, then you know it has become longer,
ستكون كإبرة أو كهذا خيط صغير يعني يغتغون فإذا تريته أنه تجاوز الكفة.
That you could even put like a needle or something small, that you see that now the shadow has gone beyond the point, that it's gotten longer.
قليل جدا.
What does longer mean? It means that the sun has begun to go down.
أي طول ولو قدر إبرة.
Of course, the complete once it's sunset, there's no more shadow. Everything is darkness. And between that time, obviously, the shadow is now going to get longer and longer and longer and longer until sunset. So then you know that you measure the asr time from there. قالوا فكيف تحسب العصر؟
عندما تنتهي القامة الأولى وتبدأ القامة الثانية قلناها.
So then this is what we went. Now understand in detail. You are 7 footsteps tall, right? You need to measure. This footstep is measured from your short toe or your middle toe or your long toe. You do this one time in your life, you'll know how to measure your qama, the height, the length of your 7 footsteps long. So then now, once you know the noon shadow is, let's say, 3 footsteps long. Your qama is how many footsteps long? Always. Every human being. How many? 7. So now once you know the noon shadow, you add 7 footsteps to the noon shadow, then this is asr time. Once the shadow is 1 time the height of the object, plus the noon shadow. So is this clear? So you can measure this by standing in front of something and you see your shadow reaching it, and then you measure your shadow using your feet. Once the shadow is 7 footsteps long plus whatever the shadow was at noon, then you know that asr has come in. Is this clear?
Yes.
Anybody confused?
ولكن أنتم تعدون هذه بداوة.
I have a question.
But you think that this is backwardness and Bedouinness?
واحد قبل رمضان الماضي سمع أني لا أفطر على هذه الحسابات.
One person recently in
من
Ramadan,
أشهر من يتكلم في هذه البلاد.
one of the most famous speakers, he heard that I do not break my fast at the Maghrib time that is calculated by these apps.
إفطار رمضان والعيد. لا أصوم ولا أفطر.
For the fasting or for Eid or anything, that I don't go by the calculations.
فقال نحن لسنا في الغابات ولا في الأمور البعيدة من الفهم الآن.
He said we're not living in the jungle and we're not, devoid from, we're not.
عبارة عن المنهج الذي كان عليه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه لا يليق بنا.
We're not living in the jungle or anymore. We're not, meaning basically the result of what he's saying is we're not like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam anymore.
ليس نفس تلك الأيام. نحن الآن تقدمنا.
We've advanced.
نحن الآن تقدمنا.
We've advanced. We don't need to actually.
ولنا هذا التقدم الذي قدمكم بطلت صلاتكم وصيامكم وحجكم.
What is this advancement that you're doing that is actually contradicting the methodology of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and invalidating your prayer and your fast and your hajj?
أنكم تأخذون الشريعة من غير النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هذا شيء.
This means that you're taking your sharia from other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you want to do that, go ahead.
مرحبا.
Welcome.
So also a quick question in regards to
Come
when Maghrib comes. So we went to look for the moon, right? And we went up a little bit on top of some hills. The hills are still in Fremont. They're not super high up. You were able to see the sun at that time when it said that the Maghrib was in. So the question that is the Maghrib time in when you're on the Jabal inside of your town, or is it when you are on the ground floor? Does that make sense?
If you are on the mountains and you can see the horizon, then the Maghrib time comes in. So the Maghrib time comes in once the sun is below the horizon.
No.
And if you are in the area that has the hills in it, فَتَعْتَبِرْ بِمَا يُرَى فِي الْجِبَالِ, and then you would take into account what's seen in those mountains.
لكن في بلاد مسوية لا جبال فيها فهي البلاد.
And if you are in a land that is there's no mountains in it, then we mentioned if you can see the horizon, then you see when the sun sets. If you cannot see the horizon, then فإن كنت في بلاد فيها جبال فلا تعتبر بهذا الضوء، تعتبر يعني الذي يذهب للجبال ويخبر.
نعم، وهذا الدليل عليه تار الظلام من المشرق.
And you would be able to tell either way, a person going on a mountain and seeing when the sun goes below the horizon, or a particular darkness that coincides with that same time that occurs at the ground floor.
I have a question regarding the shadows, for example.
And the brother clearly, he stated, if people didn't understand clearly for the sisters to hear, that he said once we went out to sight the moon for Ramadan or for Eid, that we were on top of the hills. These are not huge mountains. We were on top of the hills, and the Maghrib time, according to the phone saying Maghrib entered. And then for a few minutes afterwards, we still saw the sun. It's saying Maghrib, but the sun is there. So the time is, without a doubt, incorrect. How many minutes do you know?
5.
Yeah.
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5, 6.
هذا أسهل ما يفعل.
And this is the least of the problems that they do. Yes.
هذا أسهل من واحد يقول واحد أسأله لذكر كنت لا تعلم.
And this is much less of a problem than a person saying, ask the Jews and the Christians of today.
حتى
if you don't
تقتدي
know.
به.
Meaning, if you don't know something, go and ask them. And using this as a proof to say, oh, if we're commanded to ask them, then their books must be uncorrupted.
ما شاء الله.
MashaAllah, the logic.
So my question is regarding, for example, say it's a very cloudy day and there's no shadow appearing. How would someone figure out the prayer time? Would they
ذلك من كل
use
الأيام
past
تعلم.
events to reference, get an idea of the time? Or would...
تقيس على الأيام له.
This is my question.
So you would
عندك
hold it in
الساعة.
you have a clock, you have other ways to measure time.
Yeah.
And you would now, you don't have a cloudiness for days and days and days and days. You would measure it in accordance with the other days.
العلماء تكلموا عليه.
And the scholars have gone into detail.
قالوا يعتبر ذلك بأصحاب الصناعات. تعرف أصحاب الصناعات كانوا يكملون كل ساعتين نوع من الصناعة. هذا قال الحطاب والعلماء ليس ما تركونها. هذا يعتمد على ذلك على أصحاب الصناعات. تعرف لما يفرغون من هذا فقد انتهى ذلك الحكم.
And they would calculate even sometimes according to tradesmen. It would take them 2 hours to finish like a batch of something, or 2 hours. Like they would measure the
أصحاب
time.
البنايات وأصحاب الحداد وأصحاب الصناعة وأصحاب.
The people who are building, the people who have different trades. يعني
كل يوم تأخذ منهم 6 ساعات و5 ساعات.
that to finish their work of the day takes about 6 hours or 5 hours. So you know once they're done with this in relation to what they are doing.
عندك تجربة بهم.
And now of course you have a clock, so you'd know that yesterday the Asr time was at such and such time exactly. So you'd know that the maximum difference between it and today would be 1-2 minutes. So it would help you observe in accordance with the actual method of observation, which is which we mentioned, to then use the clock.
ومن هنا نعلم هل أكثر تدقيق العلماء قبلنا أو نحن الآن.
So then with this we know that who is more detailed and precise, the scholars of before or us today. فهل يسمح لك أن تستخدم الساعة لتقرب لك؟
نعم جيد نفعل ذلك ونستدل بها في أوقات الجهل.
You can use the clock.
قالها الحطاب قال القانة هي الساعة هذه.
You can use the clock to know obviously
أي
what
ليس
time it
جديد
is.
عند الأندلسيين من قبل 1000 سنة تقريبا.
And they had clocks in Spain 1,000 years ago. That they knew that.
هذا سبب شديد. عندهم العامية يصوبونها ما زالوا الآن الغرب عاجزين عن تفكيرهم. الغرب من أمريكا وأوروبا عاجزين عن تصميم هذا التوقيت الذي في الحمراء قرطبة.
That the Western scholars are still unable to match this precision that they came up and how they came up with this precision.
عندهم مياه تسيل فتنتهي عند دورات تسيل مثلا بالساعة. يعني شيء عجيب. عند دورات فعندما تنتهي الساعة تعطي إشارات.
That some kind of mechanism to determine that exactly is precisely calibrated hour by hour. And this is what they took the hours from with precision. So to use those measurements of knowing what time it is fine. The prayer time enters once the sign of that time comes in. Now if you measured that for one day and you saw it was at 4:30, the next day you know that now it's winter or it's coming to winter, so the days are getting longer. So then you know that I'm going to measure a minute earlier or a minute later or whatever. If it's like cloudy and I can't measure and there's no shadow or something like that, then it becomes permissible. Now you know based on your observation, the root is the observation. But now you've calibrated a minute away, 2 minutes away. You know for sure based on observation right now, I would be able to witness the sign of Asr if the sun was out.
وكلكم هذه الدينات تنتسب تتكلمون عن هذا؟
And all your deen intensives, do you talk about these methodologies?
نقول حقوق العباد وحقوق الله.
You talk about the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rights of the servants?
لماذا تتكلمون عن حقوقكم أنتم؟
Why don't you talk about your rights?
أي حقوق الله.
Why do you talk about your rights? These are the rights of Allah.
هي صلاته. تتكلم عن شيء مفيد لا تضيع وقت.
فالذي لا يعتبر حين يخالف الحسابات تخالف الشرع. So what is contradicted is once the calculations, once the calculated times, once the clock, once all of these things are contrary.
أنا عندما أرى الحسابات توافق الشرع ما عندي مشكلة. يعني أعرفها بالتجربة ما عندي.
once they're contrary to the method that the deen has taught us to do. Once you know that the shar'an, that the Maghrib has not come in, literally, you see the sun with your own eyes. You're going to listen to what your phone says that it's Maghrib time? It's not Maghrib. Maghrib means sunset. The sun has not set.
هذا الكذب تايم.
The calculation is wrong. This is a lie time. It's not Maghrib time.
هذا يقال الكذب تايم. هذا يقال وقت الكذب.
And forget about Fajr time.
أعوذ بالله من الفجر تايم. لكن الفجور تايم.
That's the transgression time.
ما في فجور فوق واحد يصلي بدون وقت.
There's no transgression time above a person praying outside of the time of the prayer.
نعم شروط الصلاة طهارة حدث وطهارة خبث البدن واستواء المكان واستر العورات واستقبال القبلة وترك الكلام استقبال القبلة وترك الكلام.
And the next of the conditions of the prayer is to abandon talking,
في الصلاة
to abandon speech, to leave
وترك
speech.
الأفعال الكثيرة.
And then the final one is to leave excessive movements.
وهذا في مذهب أبي حنيفة ضيق جدا.
Leave excessive, specifically specific actions. And in the Hanafi madhab, this is very restricted and strict.
مذهب مالك أوسع من ذلك.
In the Maliki madhab, it is more open.
ولكن لا تكثر مهما تكثر الأفعال تحركات بأن خرجت عن المعتاد فهذا يبطل الصلاة.
So if you are moving more than what is considered just a normal movement, then it's considered that you leave your prayer. This is where you broke that condition.
قلنا ستر العورة من شروط الصلاة وما هو معنى العورة.
So we said that leaving your nakedness, covering the nakedness,
وعورة الرجل ما بين السرة إلى الركبة
is required. So then, what is the considered nakedness? What is awra? For a man, the area of them that is considered their nakedness that they must cover is between the navel to the knees.
وهل لا بد أن تدخل السرة والركبة أو لا بد أو ليس كذلك؟
Now, is the navel and the knees included or not?
المشهور أنه لا يجب.
The mashhur is that the navel and the knees are not part of the awra.
خلافا لغير مالك.
And other than Malik have disagreed with this.
فعليك أن تستر الجميع.
So then what is better? Covering all of it.
حتى تخرج من الخلاف.
So that you are safe. Leaving the difference of opinion here means to be practicing something that all the opinions agree upon is fine.
والمرأة كلها عورة.
And the woman, all of her is awra.
لكن أنا سمعت واحد من أشهر محاضرين العرب من أشهر علمائهم يقول لهم في العورة شيء خفيف وشيء غليظ وكان الفقهاء ما ذكروا. تعرف ماذا النتيجة منه؟ لأجل أن يقول للنساء لا تفكروا.
And then I heard one of the speakers in the East saying, one of the Arabs saying, from the most famous so-called scholars of the world today, he was saying that, there's a light awra and there's a heavy awra, meaning as if the scholars haven't clarified this before, that he is saying these things as in don't worry about awra, don't worry about covering yourselves. These are called the pathways of misguidance. You know how many doors of problems and trials this opens? To the level where women will stop paying attention to what they're covering. Until she's playing with the young men and shaking their hands at the doors of the masjids. And this happens. This is the opening of corruption.
قلت لكم أمس أن رجلا لا يريد أن يتزوج امرأة لا يحقق في وجهها لا يجوز ذلك.
I told you yesterday that the man who is not in a position where they are evaluating a person for marriage, evaluating a woman for marriage,
لا يتأمل
then
وجهها.
he is not allowed to focus on her face and in detail.
ولا يتكلم معها كذا.
And he is not allowed to excessively talk to her or unnecessarily talk to her excessively.
وقلت لكم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان معه عقيل بن أبي طالب وهو من كبار الصحابة، كان راكبا معه خلفه على جمل في حديث مسلم، فنظر عقيل إلى امرأة والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يخاطبه وقال الفت وجهك عن الموت.
That the Prophet ﷺ was riding a camel with the companion
مع ابن عمه عقيل بن أبي طالب
with his cousin عقيل ibn Abi Talib, the son
في
of Abi
حديث
Talib.
مسلم.
In a hadith in Muslim, and عقيل ibn Abi Talib,
النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يتكلم مع امرأة
the Prophet ﷺ was talking to a woman,
وكان عقيل ينظر إليها
and Aqil was looking at her.
فقال الفت وجهك عن
So the
الموت.
Prophet ﷺ told Aqil, turn your face away.
نعم، هو يقول تعالى انظروا إلى وجوه النساء العورة فيها خفيف وفيها غليظ.
And now they're saying, come and look at the faces of women. There's light awra and heavy awra, as if it makes it permissible to look at the light.
وما بعد هذا إلا أن يمشي ويكون صديقها وصديقته. ما بعد هذا إلا أن.
The only thing remaining after that is to be her, boyfriend or be boyfriend and girlfriend.
هذا تمهيد للأصدقاء.
This is preparation for friendship,
جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا. Thank you very much. شكرا. شكرا. فعلتم ما عليكم من الفساد.
You did your job in spreading corruption.
ستعلمون.
You will know.
وعورة رجل ما بين السلام والمرأة كلها عورة ما عدا الوجه والكفين. ما عدا الوجه والكفين، هذا مذهب مالك. ما عدا الوجه الذي يغسل في الوضوء وليس منه هذا، ليس من الوجه.
And the awra of the woman is all of her, except for the face and hands, and this is the madhab of Imam Malik.
هذا هو اليدان.
And important, and the hands. Just
هذا
like
ليس من
wudu.
اليد. هذا ليس من اليد.
What is the wudu? What did we talk about? The face is from the
من
covering the hair.
منابت شعر الرأس المعتاد
From the top
إلى
of the forehead
الذقن.
to the bottom of the chin, meaning that this whole neck, all of this,
وإلى أصول الأذن.
and the anything from the beginning of the ear is not allowed. Must be covered. The neck is not showing the neck, is showing the awra. And the hands, what are the hands? The wrists, then at the wrist, that's the end of the hands. The arm, this is awra.
نعم، هذا من هنا عورة.
From here is awra, from the wrist down.
هذا حدود، هذا يقال له الحدود.
These are the boundaries, the border.
لكن على أقل حال إذا لم تقدروا على زوجاتكم فلا تكذبوا على الله. أهم شيء.
But at the least is that if you're not able to overcome or teach your wives, and you can't control your wives, then at least don't lie about Allah.
هذا أمر سهل لنا. نحن كلنا كثير من عاجز. أنا بنفسكم عاجز عن بعضها ولكن لا تكذب على الله.
A lot of you are unable, and this is something beyond the ability of some people to influence their wives. And there's some things all of us are unable to deal with our wives, but then don't lie about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
لا تمهدوا طرق الفساد.
And don't open the doorways of corruption, and don't prepare the paths of
ما
corruption.
عدا الوجه والكفين، هذا إذا لم تخف فتنة في الوجه.
And this is if the face of the person is not a cause of fitna or a reason to fear a temptation.
فإذا خيفت الفتنة فاختلف العلماء.
And if that fitna is feared from the face, then the scholars have a difference of opinion.
وهل عليها الستر حين تختشي فتونه أو قصده للذة؟ هل عليها أن تستر وجهها إذا خافت فتون الرجال أو يقصدها باللذة كما يقع لكثير من وقول ذلك قال إذا كانت جميلة فعليه أن تسترها. عليها أن تستره، وإذا كانت غير جميلة فلا يجب عليها أن تستره، ويجب على الرجل أن يغطي بصره.
So as far as if the woman, there is fear for her to cause fitna for men, to cause a temptation for men, to the point that men would lust after her, then what should she do? One opinion is that if she is a beautiful woman, then she should cover her face.
وبعضهم قال تغطيه مطلقا.
And other scholars have said that regardless of whatever, she must cover her face. Other scholars have said that if she's beautiful, she must cover her face. If there's a fear of causing this effect upon men.
وبعضهم قال لا يجب عليها مطلقا.
And if she was unattractive, then she wouldn't have to cover it. And others say that regardless of whatever, she doesn't have to cover her face.
وعليه أن يغمض عينيه.
And it is upon the man then to close his eyes in that case.
على كل حال لا بد هو أن يغمض عينيه وهي تغطي وجهها، لا بد.
And this is.
على كل حال ما في طريق غير هذا.
And then in any case, he should be lowering his gaze and covering his eyes, and she should be hiding her face.
لا بد من أحد الأمرين.
One of these has to happen.
أين خفيف العورة؟ هذا الكلام باسم.
What are you talking about?
لا تركز كونه يرى وجه هذا ليس الحرام، ولكن كونه يركز على وجه هذا المشكلة.
So him seeing her face, this is not haram.
ولكن يردد المرات بعد كانوا يتكلموا مع أمه في السبعينات.
But him focusing on her face or repeating the look back to her face, like he's talking to his mother in her 70s.
كان يريد أن يبر أمه.
Like he wants to give respect to his mother by looking at her. The face.
هذا الكلام على الوجه.
This is just talking about the face.
أما غير الوجه فلا والكفين فلا يجوز مطلقا أن يراه الأجنبي مطلقا، هذا بالنسبة للنظر الآدمي، ما نتكلم عن الصلاة.
And this is, forget about prayer, to look at something besides the face and the hands is not permissible.
هذا لا يختلف فيه العلماء.
This is not focusing. This is not, looking back and forth. This is something that the scholars do not differ in. إلا حال الرجل.
الرجل في خلاف الرجل أما الرجل ففيها خلاف. أكثر العلماء يجب تغطية ظاهرها وترك خارج باطنها، وبعضهم يقول أن الرجل لا حرج فيها.
And there is no difference of opinion about seeing that it's haram to see any other part of the body of a woman besides her face and hands, except for one opinion about the feet, that there's a difference of opinion about the feet, whether the top of the feet is forbidden and the bottom isn't, or whatever it may be.
نعم، هذا بالنسبة للرجال، بالنسبة للأجانب، بالنسبة للنظر.
This is as far as the strange men looking at the feet of a unrelated woman.
ولا يختلف في اللغة بالعورة الخفيفة أو الغليظة، هذا لا يجوز.
It doesn't matter whether you're looking at what is considered light awra or heavy awra. That is something in regard to the validity of prayer and how to make up a
شيء
prayer.
آخر متعلق بالصلاة.
That's entirely different. It doesn't mean that one is haram to look at, the other part is halal.
فهمتم الخديعة؟ فهمتم الخديعة؟
You understand the deception that they're doing?
عرفتم هؤلاء كيف يتصرفون يعني؟
You see how these tricksters operate.
أنا أعرف هؤلاء اللصوص.
I know these thieves, these crooks.
أنا أعرف من أين خرجوا.
I know where they came from.